Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and yes, we're finally getting back to some more Warhammer the Old World content and a faction focus. I know it's been some time, but I've been traveling with work. It's been summer with family vacation, and you know we've had a lot going on. So we're now at a point. We're doing Bretonnia as a faction focus, and we've still got obviously High Elves and Wood Elves, which will be coming. And like I say, I'm hoping to get my Warhammer the Old World content out in a bit more regularly as we lead up to September and October and so on. So I want to get more of these factions out. But we're going to be covering Bretonnia. So if you did watch my tier list video, my views on Bretonnia right now is they are very, very strong. This is going to be a standard faction focus, so we're not going to be delving into the Arcane Journal. That will be something separate. But we're going to be taking a look, as we have done with all the other faction focuses, the army rules, going through the individual units by their category. And then we're going to look at some the magic items and so on, some comparisons across unit, a couple of fun lists to play, not meta lists, and then look at if there are any missing units. So starting off then, the Grand Army and Special rules. So first off, Blessings of the Lady. So once deployment is complete, instead of rolling off to see who goes first, the Bretonnian player may kneel and pray to gain Blessings of the Lady. The Bretonnian player will then start second. This is a classic rule that's been around in Bretonnia for quite some time. So, what happens if you do this? Why would you want to do it? Well, all models with Blessings of the Lady gain 6+ ward save against any wound suffered, and they gain a 5+ ward save against any wounds at a strength 5 or higher. So this is really, really good, and there's a couple of reasons why I really like this. First off, Bretonnia's strongest units are cavalry and heavy cavalry. They have less models per unit. They tend to be more expensive. So anything you can do to increase their durability is great. The other thing is, Bretonnia doesn't have any access to full plate armor. So the cavalry aren't ever going to be down at that 2+ armor save. It's going to be heavy armor with shield and barding. So, you know, anything you can do to get yourself another chance to save is going to be really, really important to keep those heavily armored knights doing their thing. So, if for any reason there is no roll-off to determine the first turn, the Bretonnian player cannot kneel and pray. And if it is a Bretonnia versus Bretonnia battle, civil war itself, neither player can kneel and pray, which is quite interesting. And then any model or unit that flees, or any character that refuses a challenge, will immediately lose this special rule. Falling back in good order does not count as fleeing for the purpose of this special rule. So running away, not a good thing. But for a knight, you kind of get it. So next up, Finest War Horses. So when a unit with this special rule makes a charge, flee, or pursuit roll, it may re-roll natural ones. That's brilliant because you want to make sure you're getting your charges in, getting your pursuits in if you can. So that's really important. Lance formation. So this, again, a unique feature of Bretonnia. Lance formation with the knights been around pretty much, if I remember, since the beginning. And, you know, looks cool. We'll delve more into what it's going to mean, but it certainly looks cool on the tabletop and really makes Bretonnia stand out with their cavalry. And then you've got Peasantry, which is if a unit with this rule is within 6 inches of a friendly model that has the Knight's Vow, the Questing Vow, or the Grail Vow, and is not fleeing, this unit can use that model's leadership as its own. That helps keep your peasants in check because they're not that good. And units with this rule carrying a standard cannot be counted as a trophy of war. So standard bearers in peasant units, That's not a problem. And a character with this rule can only join a unit that also has this special rule. So peasant characters with peasants, no knight. So you can't be having a unit of peasants with a Grail Knight in it. Okay. Now we got the chivalrous vows themselves. So the Knight's Vow, this is the basic one. So you do not take a panic test when a friendly unit with the peasantry special rule is destroyed within 6 inches, or if it flees through the unit. And a unit with this rule cannot be joined by a character that has the peasantry rule, and vice versa. Now, Questing Vow, this is going to give you everything you got in the Knight's Vow, plus you're going to get access to the Stubborn special rule, and you can re-roll failed fear, terror, and panic tests. So in reality, this, obviously you can apply this to characters, but for questing knights, that's going to make them pretty durable, makes them much more anvil. You charge them in, they're not going to be running away with that stubborn, and it does mean that they can pretty much go after enemy units without worrying about that psychology, which is important. And then the final one, the Grail Vow wheel. This one has to be the best, right? Because it's the Grail Vow. So a model with this vow is immune to psychology and has magical attacks as well as the stubborn special rule. And models with this special rule always have the blessings of the lady and do not have to pray. However, they also cannot refuse a challenge. So that's one thing on there, but you're looking at who's got the Grail Vow, well, it's Grail Knights and maybe a really high-end character, right? So, and then you've got the same rule about joining characters joining units. However, a unit with this rule cannot be joined by a character that has the Questing Vow or the Knight's Vow or the Peasantry rule. So only Grail Vow with Grail Knights. So if you want to put a character in your Grail Knights, they've got to have the Grail Vow. So no just whopping a paladin with a battle standard in there, for example. But can be joined by a handmaiden of the lady, and a character with this vow cannot join a unit with the peasantry special rule. So definitely worth checking out who's joining what. Okay, so then we've got Law of the Lady. So these are our spells. So first up is the Lady's Gift. So this is an enchantment. It has a casting value of 7 and then another one of 10 plus. Range is 12 inches and it does remain in play. So what does it do? So you target friendly unit, gain 6 plus regeneration, and if your casting is 10 or more, you gain 5 plus regeneration. Can you imagine this on a unit of knights with an armor save, Blessing of the Lady with a ward save and regeneration? Pretty nice. And can target friendly units engaged in combat, which is also nice. So maybe you charge in, you fluff something, you realise you've got to shore up this, or maybe you're going to charge into something that is tough and you're going to get attacked back. Well, you can do that. So you've got to think about when you're casting this in the game and in the sequence. Next up, Lady's Wrath, also an enchantment. So casting value here 9 plus, range is self and remains in play. The caster, their mount, and any unit they have joined gains +1 strength and improves the AP of their weapons by 1. So typically you've got casters on foot, you're probably going to think about putting them in a unit of peasant bowmen. That could be interesting. Suddenly peasant bowmen with the longbows have an improved AP, which I think could be interesting. Or maybe they get charged by something, and that extra strength can help as well. So I think this is actually quite a nice spell. Quite a nice spell. And then finally, you've got Burning Gaze, which is our magic missile. Casting value is 10 plus. It's got 5d6 range, which makes it a bit RNG in terms of how far you can do it. However, you draw a straight line 5d6 inches from the caster, and any enemy model whose base is under the line of fire suffers a strength 4 hit, and they get no armor saves. However, they can use ward and regeneration saves. So, maybe you're fighting an army who's a bit bunched up, and your caster's, for whatever reason, has got close to the front line, or has got ideally, if you did this from the flank across a line of enemy units, that could be quite interesting and maybe a good thing to do if you had a caster who was on a horse, for example, that was able to maneuver into the right position to get the most from this spell. Okay, next up is Lance Formation. So Lance Formation, forming the Lance. Lance Formation consists of 2 or more models arranged in edge-to-edge base combat. You've got all models must face the same direction and arranged in horizontal rows called ranks. And the front rank contains 1 model, the second 2 models, and the third 3 models, and so on. Then you've got lance facings. The front, flank, and rear arcs of the unit are determined by the models in the second and last rank. Right. So then command group models. Command group models are placed at the front of the unit, and the standard bearer, not the champion, should take precedence at the front of the unit, which is also interesting. And then maneuvering a lance. So a lance formation may not turn or redress the ranks, but it may wheel, it may move backwards, sideways, and reform as normal. And then when the formation wheels, movement is measured from the second rank. All other movement is measured from the model at the front. And then we have lance in combat. Now that's the important bit, right? So in combat, only the model at the front is required to make base contact with the enemy. If this model cannot make base contact, the lance becomes blunted. When fighting in combat, every model on the outside of the formation is considered to be in the fighting rank. So that's every model on the outside. So that could be... it can be very useful if you're dealing with narrow-fronted units, for example, and in base contact with the enemy. So rank bonus. A unit in lance formation can claim a rank bonus of +1 for each rank that contained enough models as determined by its troop type. And then combat result bonus. A unit in lance formation may claim a +1 combat result bonus as well. So lance formation is pretty useful. Flank charges. If the lance is charged in its flank, align the enemy unit to its widest rank, and the lance becomes blunted. So blunting the lance. A lance becomes blunted if the model at the front cannot make base contact, it makes a disordered charge, or if it's charged by an enemy unit and does not perform a counter charge. So a blunted lance immediately reforms to adopt a close order formation. Then place the number of models equal to the lance's number of complete ranks in base contact with the enemy unit. Blunting a lance by a charging enemy unit and causing a reform could also cause subsequent charges to fail. So it's basically it's pushing you out of lance formation, which means to get back in it, you're going to have to do the necessary reforming. And then casualty removal. When removing casualties, you may remove from the middle of the back rank rather than from one end as normal. And then lance formation and skirmishers. So when a unit of skirmishers charges or is charged by a lance, skirmishers will not form up once contact has been made. Instead, each skirmisher is moved as directly as possible towards the lance in order to make base contact with it and one another. Models that make base contact with the lance are in the fighting rank, and models that cannot are placed behind the fighting rank. Skirmishers cannot blunt a lance, which is quite interesting. And then characters joining a lance. Characters joining a lance are placed on the outside of the formation in any rank, displacing one or more rank and file models as normal. A character can take the position of a command group model in the first or second rank, and the command group model will then be placed further back on the outside of the lance and will in turn displace a rank and file model. If a character that has joined a unit in lance formation and is required to retire to the rear, they may be placed in the middle of any rank not including the first or second, and a character that has retired cannot occupy a position on the outside of the formation and will no longer be in the fighting rank. Right, so that's Lance formation. You can see there, I think Lance formation incredibly good. Just need to be, again, careful with your movement and how you use it. As I've said many times before, Warhammer the Old World are very much a game where movement is the deciding factor. So, in terms of our Grand Army composition, pretty standard in terms of the layout, but let's see what you can get. So characters then, it's 50% of maximum of army points. You can have 0 to 1 Duke, so you can never have more than one, regardless of your size of your army. You can have 0 to 1 Baron or Prophetess per 1,000 points, and any number of Paladins, Damsels, Sergeants at Arms. And a single Paladin may be upgraded to be a Battle Standard Bearer for no additional points cost, which is great, and may purchase a Magic Standard with no points limit. Core, so you get 25% minimum of army points. You get 1+ unit of Knights of the Realm on foot or mounted Knights of the Realm. So you must take a unit of Knights of the Realm, either on foot or mounted. You must take 1+ unit of men-at-arms or peasant bowmen. And then you can take 0 to 1 unit of Knights Errant per unit of Knights of the Realm on foot or mounted taken. So, you can do this quite easily. I mean, in terms of your peasants, if you want to minimise peasants, you just go for 1 unit of peasant bowmen. Outside of that, basically, mixture of knights and peasants, knights errant. If you, I don't see the knights errant restriction being a major problem. Knights errant certainly are my favourite. We will come on to those. So I really don't see that you're going to be wanting to spam a whole army of knights errant. Special then, 50% max of army points, any number of squires, questing knights, Pegasus knights, and mounted yeomen, and 0 to 2 units of battle pilgrims per 1,000 points. And then rare. Rare, 25% max of army points. So you can have 0 to 1 field trebuchet per 1,000 points, and any number of Grail Knights. I mean, this is always going to be a difficult one because Grail Knights are quite expensive. You don't have many points to play with. So again, limiting the field trebuchet. Do I really see people wanting to put 3 field trebuchets in an army of 2,000 points? Not really. So I don't really see that being the biggest issue here. I think ideally you're going to always want to take at least some Grail Knights, so you're not going to need those extra field trebuchet points. Okay, and then finally we got the Mercenaries, which is 20% max of army points. And then you've got Allies, 25% max of army points. Any Kingdom of Bretonnia Army of Infamy can be an ally. And then you can take one of the following Grand Army composition lists. So Dwarven Mountain Holds, so that's suspicious. Empire of Man and High Elf Realms, and Wood Elf Realms, suspicious. And as with other armies, I mean, good for fluff and all that other type of thing. If you want, when doing some sort of narrative campaign but in a competitive environment, I don't see the main benefits of Mercenary Allies, except, maybe there are some very, very niche examples, but I don't see this being a common thing on a competitive tabletop. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen, that is the first episode in our Bretonnia faction focus. We're back into it, and next up we'll be taking a look at the Bretonnian characters. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you want to keep seeing more content, and there is more content coming, not just the video games, we are continuing with our old world content, then please hit that subscribe button. It's totally free for you to do. It takes a few seconds, but it's a big deal for me, so thank you for that in advance. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I will see you all very, very soon.